Excuse me, Mr. Donlan. Excuse me. Do you know why the FBI came to your house on Friday? Could you tell us who your lawyer is, Mr. Donlan?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Excuse me, Mr. Donlan. Excuse me. Do you know why the FBI came to your house on Friday? Could you tell us who your lawyer is, Mr. Donlan?
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching The Sal Greco Show. On this edition of The Sal Greco Show, as you just saw, we have a few scandals that are just rocking New York City and the Eric Dym administration as a whole, as well as the New York City Police Department. And before we get into that, I would like to say over the weekend, I went to Highlight out in Magic City Casino, the Fronton there, another great Friday night there. Then it was sadly the final Saturday evening baseball game for the Miami Marlins. It was the last time that I'll be able to go to Loan Depot Park and watch the Miami Marlins, who they did lose to the Atlanta Braves, but the New York Mets won, and they stayed ahead of the Atlanta Braves this weekend for that wild card spot. And these are two things that I like to do: baseball, highlight, just keep your mind off what's really going on, because sometimes you just need a breather. So my hat's off to the Highlight League, the Renegades, who defeated the defending champion Warriors, and of course the Marlins. Even though they're not a good team, it's still a very, very festful and entertainment-filled afternoon and evening when you go to the game. And with that, let's get into what happened over the weekend with the new New York City Police Commissioner, Thomas Donlan. Feds raid home of interim NYPD Commissioner Thomas Donlan week after predecessor Edward Caban resigned. This is by Patrick Riley and Larry Salona of the New York Post. Federal authorities raided the home of NYPD interim Commissioner Thomas Donlan on Friday, just over a week after his predecessor Edward Caban resigned following an FBI raid at his residence. Donlan admitted to the search in a brief statement released by the department late Saturday night, saying that authorities took materials that came into my possession 20 years ago and are unrelated to my work with the New York City Police Department. He added that the department would not be commenting further as it's not a NYPD matter. Donlan, who was pulled out of retirement from his federal law enforcement career to be the city's top cop, did not specify which federal agency searched his home. Sources told the Post authorities are looking into whether he took classified documents while he was with the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. The feds are sending a message to Mayor Eric Dym that no one is safe, as several members of his administration and inner circle are under investigation, another source said. As we have repeatedly said, we expect all team members to fully comply with any law enforcement inquiry, City Hall spokesperson Fabian Levy said. A law enforcement source told the Post that the feds are sending a message to Mayor Eric Dym that no one is safe, as several members of his administration and inner circle are under investigation. Adams tapped Donlan as NYPD outsider to take over as New York City's interim commissioner on September 12th after Caban, an NYPD vet of 30 years, abruptly resigned amid a federal investigation. Electronic devices were seized by federal agents at Caban's and other city officials' home as part of what sources described as a sweeping corruption probe involving potential influence peddling. Caban cited the media frenzy surrounding the investigation as well as a probe into his twin brother as a distraction for the department in his resignation letter. Other Adams inner circle who are ensnared by the federal dragnet were Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Phil Banks, former NYPD official Tim Pearson, Schools Chancellor David Banks, and their brother Terrence Banks, and First Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright. On Friday, the city's head of Asylum Seeker Services, Molly Schaefer, was subpoenaed by federal authorities as part of the probe into Pearson. Donlan, a Bronx native, boasts a long resume in law enforcement at the local, state, federal, and international levels. The 57-year-old previously served as New York's director of the Office of Homeland Security, ran the FBI's National Threat Assessment Center, and the FBI-NYPD Joint Terrorism Task Force. When he accepted the position as interim commissioner, Donlin vowed to uphold the highest standards of integrity and transparency and support our dedicated officers who put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. Additional reporting also by Craig McCarthy of the New York Post. Stopgap NYPD Commissioner Tom Donlin lays down law on first days. Only one voice. It's by Larry Salona, Craig McCarthy, and Matt Troutman from the New York Post. NYPD Interim Commissioner Thomas Donlin laid down the law in his first hours on the job, warning brass there's only one voice in his department, and that's me, while privately describing the largest police force in the nation as in disarray, sources say. But the temporary top cop's strict, I'm the boss approach has its limits. Mayor Eric Dym shot down Donlin's first week move to try to shake up the NYPD's upper ranks by giving some higher-ups the boot, a law enforcement source told the Post. Insiders familiar with Adams' thinking said the mayor doesn't want to clean house without knowing the full scope of a federal probe that toppled former Commissioner Edward Caban. Regardless, Adams still hopes Donlin, a retired FBI official with an impressive resume, will help rebuild the NYPD's image until a long-term successor or long-term commissioner is appointed, sources said. Sources insisted that Donlin feels secure in his position even after facing a federal raid of his own over the weekend in a search for 20-year-old materials from a past job. The new, if short-term, police commissioner flexed his muscles during his first sit-down with executive staff September 13, sources said. Donlin told those gathered in the Executive Command Center that he planned to institute a one-voice policy for NYPD messaging, a move that would effectively muzzle tweet-happy brass such as Chief of Patrol John Schell and Deputy Commissioner of Operations Kaz Dawdry on social media, insiders said. The move rankled many brass who view social media as key to their public safety strategy, sources said, but critics have long decried the aggressive recent social media posts by top officials as unprofessional at best. NYPD officials have been quiet on social media since Donlin's directive. Photos tweeted from the meeting with Donlin show many sour-faced NYPD executives. Sources said police brass were also taken back by Donlin's previously disclosed plan to effectively pause proactive police work, especially with the community response team, a revamped version of the department's disbanded anti-crime unit. Donlin is also surrounding himself with a cadre of close advisors, sources said. But any hopes Donlin has to jettison existing police brass will have to wait. Insiders said Adams and City Hall officials view any NYPD shakeups as risky, given the federal investigation. Police officials are also reluctant to launch their own probe into potential wrongdoing out of fear it could step on the Fed's toes, sources said. The prevailing view is that until the accusations being investigated by the feds are known, it'll be foolish to move around police executives who may nor may not be involved, sources said. Adams also wants to give the next permanent commissioner a chance to put who they want in the top department roles, according to sources. Until then, Donlin is in charge, and his first department-wide message Monday emphasized collaboration. Together, we will make the safest big city in America even safer, he wrote. Additional reporting by Joe Marino of the New York Post. Now, here's a post from X by myself. 13 days later, mainstream media catches up to everyone else. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show, hashtag Finest Unfiltered. This is the headline from this article you just heard me read out, which was right here, September 23rd, 2024. And here's my post, September 14th, 2024. According to sources, the interim NYPD PC, Tom Donlin, had a meeting today with top brass. Promotions are on hold. No executives allowed to talk to the press without prior consent. Executives and cops must be at their assigned posts. Welcome to a return to proper decorum again. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Here's another post by myself. It says, the current NYPD Police Commissioner, Thomas Donlin, raided by the feds the other day himself, signed a letter urging leniency for the FBI agent who is running the Russian collusion investigation at the same time taking bribes from the Russians, Charles McConigal. And let's read the letter. This is from Thomas Donlin to the Honorable Judge Colleen Collar, Cotelli. I am writing on behalf of Charles Charlie McGonigal in regards to his upcoming sentencing. I have known Charlie for over 25 years, first meeting him while we were employed as special agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation assigned to the FBI New York City field office. Throughout the years, I developed both a professional and personal relationship with Charlie, jointly engaging in and working foreign counterintelligence and counterterrorism investigations. I retired as a Senior Executive Service, SES, Section Chief at the National Threat Center Section at FBI headquarters. After retiring from the Bureau in 2009, Governor David Paterson appointed me to the position of Director of Homeland Security for New York State, where I continued my relationship with Charlie and had many more positive interactions, including, but not limited to, his sharing of investigative information with law enforcement agencies throughout New York State. In the time that I have known Charlie, he always conducted himself with honesty, integrity, and professionalism. I witnessed firsthand his relationship with the younger personnel at the FBI and other agencies, many of whom considered him a mentor and still steadfastly support him, citing the positive impact he had in their lives and careers. Charlie has strong family values and, together with his loving wife, raised 2 college-educated children, both of whom are respectful and well-mannered and reflect the positive environment Charlie and his dedicated wife provided for them growing up. I am extremely disappointed and saddened in Charlie's action and hold him accountable for his misconduct and crime. However, Charlie has acknowledged his poor judgment and grave mistakes and has expressed deep remorse, recognizing the shame he brought on himself, his family, and his past colleagues with the FBI and other agencies. I strongly believe his deep remorse is genuine and that he will use this terrible lapse in judgment as a springboard to be a better person. I know the federal sentencing guidelines provide the court with recommendations, and I realize how significant the possible sentence could be. In writing this letter, I hope I have provided a more complete picture of who Charlie is, that he is far more than the summary of his charges in this case. I pray that the character traits I observed in all my years working with Charlie, as well as Charlie's tireless efforts on behalf of the United States, are considered, and the sentence you hand down is lenient. I sincerely appreciate your time and consideration regarding this matter. Thank you for your invaluable and dedicated service as a jurist. Sincerely, Thomas Donlin. Well, there's a lot going on there, isn't there? Very disappointing to see a flurry of activity surrounding the new NYPD commissioner, since the last commissioner had the exact same thing happen to him. Here's the problem with this. There's many conspiracy theorists out there, and I've heard the craziest conspiracies of them all. Here's a couple of facts. Number one, the prosecutors, which are the United States Attorney and the other prosecutors in this case, recommended to Eric Adams, at least to his attorney, that he choose an outsider, someone who's not affiliated with the NYPD and who isn't currently working in the administration, to be an interim police commissioner as they continue to investigate the NYPD. No, they did not instruct Eric Adams to take Thomas Donlin as the police commissioner. For all of you out there that think that is crazy or what I'm saying isn't true, do you actually think that an outside agency like the federal government or a governor can tell a mayor how to run his administration or their administration? Because the answer is no. It actually would contradict the city charter, state laws. You know, this isn't a dictatorship. It was an ask by the federal prosecutors. So Eric Adams, in his infinite wisdom, probably in his, mind, decided to listen to a few people surrounding him. We all know that Eric Adams loves corruptible individuals. He must have spoke to one of them. I mean, I'm only assuming, but it only makes sense here. And they recommended this guy, Thomas Donlin. For Eric Adams, who touts himself as someone who wants diversity and the first of this and the first of that, he picked a Caucasian Irish guy that was a former FBI agent to now lead the police department. None of that makes sense. Obviously, there is some kind of interaction from the prosecutors to his lawyers to tell Eric Adams, you need to choose an outsider, which he did. And of course, he picked the wrong outsider because this outsider just was treated the exact same way the last police commissioner was treated. And just so you understand, the prosecutors are not going to tell Eric Adams, I want you to pick this individual and then raid them in some kind of conspiracy theory that Joe Biden, the president, or listen, like they're fighting over the migrant shelter thing or whatever crazy conspiracy you're hearing out there. Let's bring it down a notch, and I'm going to bring you back to reality. So the prosecutors asked for an outsider. This is who Eric Adams chose, and he chose another corruptible individual because, as I posted on X, and I read the letter, this individual, Thomas Donlan, actually wrote a letter of leniency to a convicted felon FBI agent who is not only a disgrace to the FBI, but a disgrace to the United States, where he was taking bribes from the Russians while he was one of the people that was orchestrating the whole Russian collusion narrative that pretty much was a dent in the Trump administration while Donald Trump was president of the United States. Actually cost him 2 or 3 years of just every day the media reporting on it. That's who Thomas Donlan was asking for a letter of leniency, and who is his very close friend, as he wrote. So he's already a corruptible individual, just knowing that alone. And here he is getting raided for documents, and he says that it's not a police matter. No, Tom, it is a police matter. You're the police commissioner. They came for documents that you had. And unlike President Trump's case, you're not allowed to have classified documents. You in particular, not you, not someone from the Senate, not the vice president, cannot have it. Only the president, who has the power to declassify classified documents, can have something like that in their possession. So Thomas Donlan could be the next person that is indicted for possession of classified documents. They're not specifying what, but they also raided multiple homes of Thomas Donlan. This is not normal, nor should it be something that New York City residents just go along and say, well, you know, the head of the agencies keep getting raided by the Fed, so we should keep them there. Taxpayers should go along with this. Thomas Donlan, you need to resign immediately. This is so troubling and alarming that it's disgusting, because not only did Thomas Donlan get raided, but he's also writing letters of leniency to his friend that was a convicted felon FBI agent who, by the way, he can't associate with anymore if he's the police commissioner. We don't know if he does or he doesn't. He's writing letters of leniency for a guy who was basically treasonous to the United States, and now he might be treasonous with his documents that he may or may not have taken, or why did they raid both houses regarding documents? This is very troubling, and by the way, they don't need a warrant to go to a judge for this. As you realize, when it comes to classified documents, it's a whole different way that the government handles it. This stinks. This is disgusting. And although I am not going to go out of my way to defend Eddie Caban, who also is guilty of official misconduct, in my opinion, and in many other scholars' opinions, with what his brother was doing, and we still don't know what involvement Ed Caban has in other activities that were going on with his brothers and whatever else may have occurred underneath his leadership of the NYPD. You can't have Eddie Caban resign, saying that everything he did is corrupt and we have to change him as police commissioner, and now say, well, Thomas Donlan's okay as the head of the police department, even though they also raided his house. And actually, possession of classified documents would be an even worse crime than official misconduct that Eddie Caban committed. So this is crazy, and it's just another what can I say? Another feather in the corrupt cap of Eric Adams, who just can't get anything right, no matter what it is. Thomas Donlan must resign as the NYPD commissioner. This is not a good look for him or the police department, and I expect more to come in the future. I think that's over. Thomas Donlan needs to resign. Eric Adams will be on his 5th police commissioner in his 4 years as mayor very shortly. But wait, there's more. Feds demanded Adams administration's communications with 5 more countries as Turkey probe expands. Sources. This is by Craig McCarthy and David Proper of the New York Post. Federal prosecutors demanded City Hall cough up all communication between the Adams administration and 5 more foreign countries, a drastic expansion of the probe into Turkish campaign donations. The sprawling record request came in the July slate of subpoenas, providing the first pinhole look into one of the U.S. Attorney's Office for Southern District of New York's investigations targeting Adams and his allies since the raids of his top campaign fundraiser last November. The subpoenas sought details on all interactions between administrative officials and Israel, China, Qatar, South Korea, and Uzbekistan, sources told the Post. It was previously unknown what the subpoenas sought. Adams' 2021 campaign was also served with subpoenas for additional information on his campaign donations, specifically those that had ties to Turkey, sources said. Why the communications involving those 5 countries were demanded is unclear. Former police commissioner Edward Caban traveled twice to Qatar on the foreign government's dime, which was exclusively reported by the Post, but it was also unclear if that had anything to do with the request. One source close to the mayor called the subpoenas a ludicrous ask. Seems like a fishing expedition, the source added, but the full scope of the probe, which started in 2021, remains unknown. Adams traveled to Israel last year as part of a junket paid for by the UJA Federation of New York. It was unknown if those trips by Caban and Adams have anything to do with the federal probe. Adams spokesperson, Deputy Mayor Fabian Levy, declined to comment on the content of subpoenas. But as we have repeatedly said, we will continue to fully comply with any law enforcement inquiry, said Levy. Adams, City Hall, and his election committee were hit with grand jury subpoenas in July by the feds digging into his 2021 campaign fundraising, sources told the Post last month. The trio of subpoenas were seeking text messages, documents, and other communications and materials, sources said. Adams has denied any wrongdoing. It takes a great deal of discipline to not say something when you know you've done nothing wrong, he said last month. Investigators were eyeing questionable donations from the Turkish government during Adams' first run for mayor, as well as airline upgrades and fast-tracking the opening of Turkey's new diplomatic headquarters in Manhattan, according to sources. The home of Adams' top fundraiser, Brianna Suggs, was raided by the FBI last November as part of the Turkey probe. The mayor and anyone in his circle have not been accused of wrongdoing. Other City Hall and NYPD officials have been targeted in separate federal probes, though no one has been charged with the crime. Well, we're finally getting some clarification about those subpoenas that were issued in July. So, of course, they would look for the communications. You know why? What are they saying amongst themselves? And for somebody close to Eric to say this is a fishing expedition, really? You had a police commissioner go to Qatar where it was paid by the Qatari government, and yet this individual does not work for the government. Only the government can go to foreign nations and get their, whatever it is that they're doing out there is business for the country. This is alarming. And I've been saying it from previous episodes. I've been echoing this for months. Ed Caban went to Qatar. He was there for the Hamas attack on Israel. No prominent Jewish voice said anything about this. Why was he there? He's the police commissioner. He has access to sensitive information, and he's with a nation that harbors and has an office for Hamas. Yet there's been no contact from him to Israel or anything in regards to what? A peace deal? Like, what is he there for? And why was he there? So they are pulling on the strings of a yarn ball that's unraveling, And we're going to see what this leads to, because this is something that is very important. And it's more than what meets the eye here. Trust me, there's more to this than meets the eye. And for anybody who's thinking it's targeted or some kind of conspiracy, nobody in the U.S. Attorney's Office is just going to spend millions of dollars investigating this, putting subpoenas out for their people's residences and their electronics because of some kind of crazy conspiracy. New York City is the most important city, not only in America, but in the world. And if New York City falls, everything will fall after it. So it's very important that they do this. But wait, there's more. NYC bar owner who says he was squeezed over police protection has video for Meet with Feds. This is by Chris Sommerfeld of the New York Daily News. The Brooklyn bar owner, who alleges the former NYPD commissioner's brother squeezed him for cash in exchange for a promise of better treatment by the police, is meeting with federal prosecutors this week and has already turned over videos that he says show the pressure he was under, the Daily News has learned. Shamel Kelly, owner of the since-shuttered Juice and More bar in Coney Island, told the News he has been called in to meet Monday with prosecutors in the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office who are investigating whether James Caban, twin brother of ex-NYPD Commissioner Edward Caban, tried to get nightlife spots across the city to pay him to help resolve any problems they had with the police department. Feds working on the investigation earlier this month raided homes of and seized electronics from James Caban and scores of NYPD officials, including Commissioner Caban, who resigned September 12th amid the fallout. No one has been accused of wrongdoing in the probe. Kelly says he first connected with James Caban in late August 2023 after he reached out to the city government in search for help with addressing dozens of noise complaints lodged against his bar. Records show there were more than 80 such complaints over 2 years, but Kelly felt the NYPD response was disproportionate. WNBC reported that Ray Martin, a longtime nightlife advisor to Mayor Adams, was the city employee who put Kelly in touch with James Caban after Kelly made contact, and Martin was fired from his City Hall job last week in the wake of his role in the matter coming to light. After Martin connected them, Kelly says Caban told him over the phone he could make the cops go easier on his establishment if he paid $2,500, a sum also reported by WNBC, but Kelly balked. After Kelly told the News the cops kept coming, maybe even more than before. Before he rejected James Caban's offer, Kelly said at times he'd get as many as 10 cops at his bar who said they were there to address noise complaints. But after, he said dozens of cops would show up at a time, often several times a week, he said. Kelly said he shared multiple videos with the FBI and the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office showing incidents involving cops at his establishment, both before and after Caban's payment pitch. He said prosecutors have asked to question him Monday about those videos and how any police deployments at his establishment changed after his interactions with Caban. The News reviewed several of the clips. A spokesman for Manhattan U.S. Attorney Damian Williams declined to comment. The bar has a track record of noise complaints. City data shows the NYPD has fielded more than 80 complaints for a loud music party at Juice and More since 2022. The 311 complaints started pouring in June 2022, around the time Kelly opened his bar, and continued for over a year, with the final one listed in the data dated October 18, 2023. The data doesn't make clear who called in any of the complaints, but between September 2nd, 2023 and October 1st, 2023, there were 9 of them alone. Sometimes we didn't even have anyone in the bar, and they would still come and say they got a noise complaint. 20 to 30 officers. It never made any sense, Kelly said, of how cops responded. Every night I would be open, this would happen. This was a constant thing. In one video taken after James Caban asked for money, Kelly starts filming inside the bar, which appears empty. He then walks out onto the sidewalk where at least 20 officers can be seen. Multiple NYPD cars with sirens on are also seen parked out front. Sometimes officers would say they knew the music wasn't even loud, but they were told they had to calm, he said. Kelly said the police presence had an adverse impact on his business, which he shuttered permanently in February. We were a good establishment. We never had any fights, any altercation. It really threw me for a loop what I was going through, he said. adding he lost tens of thousands of dollars due to closing his spot. I'm back trying to survive, trying to pay off debts. I lost a lot of money. I built that bar from scratch. The NYPD press office didn't return a request for comment about Kelly's bar. As for details about James Caban's interaction with Kelly, Sean Hecker, his attorney, referred back to a statement he issued after his client first got his electronics confiscated by the feds that says he unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. His work as a consultant and acting as a liaison between the department and a private company is perfectly legal, especially given his previous career as an NYPD officer, Hecker's statement adds. Caban was fired from the NYPD in 2001 for threatening to beat up and wrongfully detaining a cab driver. In addition to the James Caban-focused probe, sources have confirmed the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office is separately investigating whether Terrence Banks, brother of Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Phil Banks and Schools Chancellor David Banks, and senior administration officials engaged in a scheme involving unregistered lobbying and kickbacks on city contracts. All three Banks brothers got their homes raided and electronics confiscated by the feds as part of the probe this month, as did First Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright and the mayor's top public safety advisor, Tim Pearson. No one has been accused of wrongdoing in that inquiry either. Adams, whose campaign is under yet another federal investigation into ties to Turkey's government, hasn't modified the duties of any of his top advisors in the wake of the raids. He said last week he remains committed to the team. This is a hard-working team that's committed to the people of this city, Adams said during his weekly press conference at City Hall on Tuesday, and we're going to continue to do so. All right, so back to the extortion racket here with James Caban and Ed Caban, whoever else is involved in this. You saw the video that they played. Now, listen, that's the 60th precinct. I worked there for many years. That sergeant in particular, I know exactly who you are. I'm waiting to see any more details trickle out because, look, the calls. There's 80 calls inside of what, a year or two, it says. There was 9 calls in just 1 month alone. If this is a scheme, the person or the persons calling this 311 should be looked at immediately because it looks like the 311s are forcing cops to show up. Sometimes it's just a few, sometimes it's 10. Then you saw basically 2 squads, almost a whole platoon show up plus an extra couple of officers. This is not normal, and I could tell you because I worked in the 60th precinct, and actually there were other places that were notorious for activities, noise complaints, and other nefarious actions, and we never went 10, 20 cops deep or 2 supervisors. There's actually a place that's not too far from the command itself that always had problems. And you're lucky if 4 cops showed up for one incident, if it was even that. This is very troubling. I believe this bar owner is onto something. Now we're going to have to play this by ear and see what else comes about this. If I was the U.S. attorney, I would most definitely interview that sergeant, the cops that were there, and find out who is making these 311 calls. Because, again, the lieutenants were in charge of the 311s. This is something that would go to the CompStat meetings that I referred to in a prior episode. CompStat meetings are where the chiefs all get together and discuss crime stats. And these 311 calls, these are the things that they were always harping about. And all of a sudden, nobody's talking about 311 calls. Find that very odd. And it seems like there's probably some executives involved in this decision-making in regards to how these nightclubs are handled because of the scandal that's going on. So we'll continue to let this play out, and we'll bring this up again if anything comes up or anything comes out of this. But Coney Island is close to the heart, and I think better of this. Before we start looking at the cops, I'd want to see what the supervisors did because they're the first in line. And if there's anything going on, the supervisor would know first. But again, wait, there's more. Consofrito alumni, New York City Sheriff Anthony Miranda is under federal investigation for a litany of actions. Are his ties to Consofrito in the Bronx, where he did not shut down their illegal party, defying a court order in May that he partook in a subject? And here's the article. New York City Sheriff under investigation as Adams Inner Circle faces federal probes. Anthony Miranda oversees the city's enforcement of unlicensed cannabis shops. This is by Michael Gartland and Timmy Facciola of Politico. The New York City Department of Investigation is probing the city's sheriff's office and the man who leads it, Anthony Miranda, as investigations of the Mayor Eric Adams' inner circle expand, according to 5 people with knowledge of the situation. The exact focus of the investigation is not entirely clear, but it comes as federal prosecutors probe the mayor, his 2021 campaign's potential ties to Turkey, and members of his inner circle. Miranda and Adams are longtime allies dating back to their days serving in the NYPD. In addition to the DOI, a city agency with subpoena power responsible for rooting out municipal corruption, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York was looking into Miranda as recently as last year, according to the Department of Finance employee with direct knowledge of the situation. The sheriff's office overseen by the Department of Finance. That person, who along with the others was granted anonymity to speak freely about a sensitive legal matter, said prosecutors were looking into allegations of public corruption but would not elaborate. He said he is also aware of other city employees who were questioned by federal investigators about Miranda last year. The sheriff is responsible for property seizure, enforcing cigarette licensing rules, and has the ability to penalize and shut down unlicensed cannabis shops. News of his legal situation comes as Adams contends with a cascade of bad news regarding his closest aides. Federal prosecutors have been raiding homes and seizing electronics devices in a sprawling probe, which is percolating 9 months before Adams is up for re-election. Spokespeople from the Eastern District and the DOI, whose commissioner is appointed by the mayor with legislative approval, declined to comment on these investigations. Reached by phone, Miranda declined to answer questions and referred Politico to the sheriff's press office. Spokesperson did not respond to a list of email questions and, when reached by phone, simply said no comment. A spokesperson for City Hall did not answer any questions regarding either investigation. Miranda's past is checkered with controversy. Adams appointed him to lead the sheriff's office in May 2022, 1 year after Miranda lent his own unsuccessful city council campaign $11,000 and reimbursed himself with $1,320 in interest. Through a mayoral spokesperson, Miranda said at that time he would work to ensure his prior campaign complies with election laws. In 2023, he backed an ex-sergeant's efforts to secure a gun permit, even after the former employee was fired for calling in sick while moonlighting as a strip club bouncer. I signed off on it, Miranda told the Daily News at the time. Then I move on. In June 2024, the New York City Deputy Sheriff's Association, the union that represents workers in the agency, called on Miranda to resign for allegedly creating a hostile work environment. He did not respond at the time to a Daily News reporter's phone call about the allegations. The head of the union, Ingrid Simonovich, testified Tuesday at a city council hearing on cannabis enforcement that multiple complaints had been made to DOI regarding Miranda's conduct and his handling of the office's enforcement efforts. Sheriff Anthony Miranda has spent the past 2 years establishing a consistent pattern of retaliation against his own workforce, punishing, threatening, and disciplining us and those who dare to challenge his occasionally questionable orders and way of doing things, Simonovich told the council. Nadia Kanath, a lawyer who represents several cannabis store owners, testified at that hearing that an NYPD official told her the sheriff's office is responsible for the seized cash. She later provided Politico with security camera footage of a law enforcement officer removing cash from registers in 4 separate raids. It is unclear from the footage whether they are NYPD or sheriff's officers. All of the properties being invoiced by the NYPD except cash. There is absolutely no method to locate the money, and we are being directed that it is the sheriff who has the money, Kanath said. So then I have to open 2 different claims with Internal Affairs and the Sheriff's Department. Each agency says the other one took it, or the other one vouched it, or the other one's responsible for it. A spokesperson for the mayor told Politico that through Operation Padlock to Protect, we have already shut down more than 1,100 illegal shops and seized an estimated $66 million in illegal products. We continue to act in accordance with the law to protect public safety. In a letter to the council sent a day before its Tuesday hearing, Miranda wrote that the office of the sheriff does not seize cash from any of the locations. NYPD seizes cash for safekeeping and investigative review when necessary. Adams, who also comes from a law enforcement background, has remained close to Miranda. In 2021, Miranda was running for Queensborough president. The National Latino Officers Association endorsed Adams' mayoral run, saying in an Instagram post, "It's not just about hearing the hashtag people, it's hashtag listening to be their hashtag voice, a characteristic that both at Eric Adams for NYCD and at Miranda for Queens share before politics." According to Miranda's LinkedIn page, he is the owner of the National Latino Officers Association. According to his association's website, he has served on its board. In October 2023, the NLOA threw its Never Forget Gala in Great Neck, New York, advertising Adams as the keynote speaker and featuring a top-shelf open bar with cigars. Tickets to the event went for $150 in advance or $300 at the door, and Miranda received an award for excellence in innovation there. During his time in City Hall, Adams has demonstrated a penchant for sticking with AIDS amid controversy. Since last November, federal agents have raided the homes or seized the phones of at least 9 people who are close to Adams, including members of his innermost circle, like his 2021 fundraiser, and 2 of his deputy mayors. The mayor's electronics were also seized on a Manhattan street last year. Neither he nor anyone else has been accused of wrongdoing. Amid the mushrooming scandal, his police commissioner and the top City Hall lawyer stepped down. Several other top aides whose homes were raided or whose devices were seized have not stepped down. Well, these illegal cannabis weed shops, the rumors have persisted for a while about the way Anthony Miranda has, how he goes about going in there, what he does with the weed, where he's storing it. Is the NYPD, aren't they supposed to be vouchering it? Now you're hearing about money. It's missing. It's not vouchered. This is crazy. All I'm going to say is this. Anthony Miranda's name has come up in investigation that I'm hearing from multiple sources in New York City, whether it be involving our favorite nightclub, Con Sofrito, whether it comes to the weed shops, whether it comes to things with the Department of Corrections. I've heard his name come up as well. So it's not like a surprise to hear that he's finally being investigated by not only the feds, but the Department of Investigation. But the fact he's still employed is also another thing. You know, Eric Adams keeps a lot of corruptible people around him, and nobody is more corruptible than Anthony Miranda, at least that we think. So it's good that we're hearing that he is being investigated and the feds are probing him. But where does this end? And again, all roads seem to lead back to one place. And although it's shuttered, it was the Hall of Felons, where all these nefarious characters hung out under one roof with police officers, police executives, politicians, lawyers, you name it. And that place was named Con Sofrito. And because of this place, the creator manager had threatened my 2 friends, John Macari and Eric Dym, but specifically John Macari, online, which started a whole campaign by the New York City Police Department. So on their recent episode of the Retired Unfiltered podcast, they went into this, what I discovered about internal affairs and Con Sofrito. And let me play the clip for you.
Let's switch gears. Shout out to Sal Greco. Sal Greco, of course, has been a good friend to the podcast here. Has been Alliance and really been at the forefront when it comes to concept fritos and exposing the hypocrisy that illustrious members of the police department, along with high-profile politicians, they patronize concept fritos, which is known to have a criminal element there, and people that have a criminal history, which should not be associated with the police department. So here we have centered in this picture is Chief Miguel Iglesias, who is the Chief of Internal Affairs. And let's get right into this. I'll let John explain it right now. But this is very important to the case that John and I followed Internal Affairs. So, John, let's get right into it.
So this picture is from I don't know if it's a Christmas party. I know that there was a Christmas party that happened that was sanctioned and actually attended by members of the Internal Affairs Bureau of the NYPD at a place called Con Sofritos, which was illegally operating in an illegal operating shed. It was recently shuttered. It's been the highlight of a lot of news articles recently. I've spoken to you about it, that the owner had came out of his face and threatened me online. Still till today, I have no idea why. It was all around the same time that John Schell and Kaz Daughtry had sent their paid goons, as well as their legal representation, to smear, slander, attempt to defame, and intimidate us from no longer doing this podcast or speaking out online. At the same time that was happening, Kaz Daughtry was talking about us while he's winning an award. You see that at the end of this show every time we play it when he talks about the retired guys. You saw the numerous tweets from this administration, both Eric Dym, John Schell, Kaz Daughtry, attacking this podcast, not without naming us, but with naming us, a bunch of guys in Wisconsin, things of that nature. BMS, Eric Dym, EDW, hashtag EDW. So all that stuff was going on. IB was actually pulling in hundreds of officers, interviewing them, showing them my Instagram, and asking them if they know me. So we had filed a complaint into IAB that all this stuff was going on. Like, we're getting threatened from criminals that the upper echelon of the NYPD associate with. We're having criminal investigations put against us, unlawful criminal investigations that are being drummed up to just try and attempt to shut us down and intimidate us by this man that you see in the middle, the chief of internal affairs. And we said that they're all criminally associating with a known criminal at a place that's operating illegally. So after that happened, the New York City Police Department changed the definition of criminal association, right? It's a convenient. Oh, when we break the law, we just change the definition of it. That's it. We break our own policy, but it doesn't matter because we put that complaint in prior. So I don't care what you guys changed it to. You still terminated numerous cops for that same allegation that you now changed it. That actually makes their termination completely illegal, even though their termination was illegal. And so Sal Greco has put this out. What you see is Rafael Salamanca, who is a city council member, land share. He's in charge of the land share. So he's the one that should know that this business has numerous unpaid fines against it, was operating illegally, and he did absolutely nothing about it. So they're at this place, Concha Fritos. You see Sergeant Dennis Rodriguez, the president of the New York City Dominican Officers Association, was rumored to have retired and put his papers in, but apparently he did not. So that was just a rumor. That was another rumor that didn't happen, like John Schell and Macari were retiring. Even though I think you're going to see Macari leave, and I guess John Schell is going to get the bump, whatever. But in the middle of it is the chief of internal affairs hanging out at a place with people that we allege the rest of the upper echelon is. And when we had filed an internal affairs complaint, we had noted in that complaint. Let me read to you what exactly we wrote.
That's so funny. I was going to read the email. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead, do it.
So,
I actually pulled up the email right now. I was about to read it. Go ahead.
So this is what we wrote. John and I will address the questions you have and provide the information we have attained so far. However, this will not be an all-accompanying list, and we expect a fair and thorough investigation, the same as you would provide to any member of the public. We aren't happy so far with your response to the allegations we have charged and your misrepresentation of our written word. We will provide the requested information as well as address the concerns we have with your omissions and misinterpretations of what we wrote, including your investigative steps, your questions, and your responses to the very serious corruption and or misconduct allegations we charged. So we did this all by email because we knew that if we called the Internal Affairs Bureau, they would omit what we said and they would misconstrue our words. So even though we emailed them, they still to today try to mix up our words and omit things that we told them. So we said, we are highly disturbed by the lack of urgency, care, and compassion regarding identifying the threats against our children. But that is exactly what is being inferred in these images. These children in these photos are not our children, but we expect the nation's largest police force to take these threats very seriously, not only against our children, but the children in these photos. These children should be immediately identified and their parents should be notified. And what those photos are, people, is a photo of two little girls And it says, you have a nice family. I hope they live a long life. I have 2 little girls. And that's what that was being inferred, because every threat that this person disseminated online was being put out indirectly towards us. But the totality of the circumstances dictated that the threats were directly against myself and Eric. And then he had put a picture out of a woman with a little boy who could have been Eric's son. And Eric does have a son. And it said the same thing. You have a beautiful family. I hope they live a long life and nothing happens to them. As well as numerous photos of an AK-47 and maps to Florida and all of these different things that they were coming down to get us.
And duct tape.
And all this other stuff. So these children should be identified and their parents should be notified. This is a very serious allegation from a disturbed individual who appears to be a uniformed member of the NYPD, should not be met with such a cavalier response as it was in question number 13. From our experiences in the NYPD and now as members of the public, we would not expect such a lack of concern. And we would have thought this clearly would be the top priority in the case. Before we provide the requested information, we need to ensure there's no conflict of interest, nor will there be a breach in confidentiality in this investigation, as this would further endanger our safety and the safety of our families. It has been well documented in the media, as well as through our own investigation, that the Internal Affairs Bureau recently co-sponsored an event at Consofritos, as well as numerous other organizations, bureaus, precincts, and individual officers in the NYPD have attended these events or patronized this establishment. We would like the commanding officer of Group 1, who was and is Joseph Profeta from the Special Investigation Unit. Joe, I hope you listen to this, because we're going to be dropping numerous allegations on you as well. And Sergeant Galvez, along with we would like the commanding officer, Joseph Profeta, to ensure that you, Sergeant Galvez, who is the investigating officer in this case, along with anyone else involved in this investigation, has never been to Consofritos, nor has ever met with Jimmy Rodriguez, who's the person who threatened me, who was the police commissioner's brother's business partner, which I still don't know why he threatened me. We don't know. Nor has relationships with anyone that has, nor is a member of any fraternal organizations or any group that has had a party at Consofritos. Anyone that has done the above must immediately recuse themselves from this investigation, including the commanding officer, who is Miguel Iglesias himself. We also want to ensure all of those conducting this investigation have never worked directly with, supervised, or have been supervised by any of the subjects. We would like to be notified of the results of this conflict of interest audit prior to proceeding with the requested information. Eric, do you have up there the response?
That's what I'm going to read right now. Are you ready? Here's the response from the good Sergeant Richard Galvez. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, lieutenants. I have requested the names, handles of the individuals that have made the threats to you and your family in the previous email in order for this investigation to be expedited. We take these complaints very seriously. The questions that were being asked are not placed in priority. The safety of you both and your families are top priority. That's bullshit. As it relates to Consofrito, the members of IAB Special Investigations Unit are not affiliated or have ever patronized this restaurant. Furthermore, there is no nexus between members of this unit and Jimmy Rodriguez. I would like to assure you that this case has lockdown access, which enables only members of the IAB Special Investigations Unit to gain access. Please contact me if you have any questions and concerns. Sergeant Richard Galvez, Special Investigations Unit, Group 1, Internal Affairs Bureau. Keep in mind, it says here, I just want to read it again to you. The members of IAB Special Investigations Unit are not affiliated or have ever patronized this restaurant. John, can you show them? Do you have the flyer? I'd love to show them that.
Well, it doesn't even matter. The flyer doesn't matter, but the flyer is whatever. They have, there's the IB logo on here. But who is in charge, ultimately, of the Special Investigations Unit? Who's ultimately in charge of it? The guy you see sitting in the middle, Miguel Iglesias, right? Sitting there, hanging out with a New York Dominican Officers Association, right? So Miguel Iglesias did not recuse himself from this investigation. He was appointed by Edward Caban, who we also made allegations against. So the whole investigation is tainted. And so what happened? Our children were threatened. We alleged that it was a uniformed member of service. And guess what IAB did tell us? It was a uniformed member of service. Guess what we know, but we don't know from IAB? We know because we know that it was what? It was a supervisor in the NYPD that was threatening us. And NYPD Internal Affairs will not release his name or his rank. The only thing they will tell us is that he is no longer a member of the New York City Police Department. They refuse to take a report for us for the fact that our children were threatened. They will not give us any information as to what happened whatsoever. The majority of our allegation rested around the fact that the NYPD Police Commissioner's brother's business partner was threatening me. I alleged that NYPD Police Commissioner Ed Caban had given my name, right? He had given my name. It's the only thing that made sense to me. I don't understand why, if it was something against the podcast or anything on social media, clearly he would have threatened Sal Greco, because I don't care. I could give two shits about Jimmy Rodriguez. Oh, he would have threatened Eric Dym as well. He didn't. He only threatened me. Why? And I'm like, why? And I'm like, At that time, I think most people think that I make the memes. I make some of them, but I don't make a lot of them. Most of them, I just share them. I share them. I think a lot of people think I make the memes. And at that time, a meme had just came out about Ed Caban, and it was him on one of his trips to Qatar, and he was sitting there with all the gold, and he had like a dashiki on, or whatever you want to call it. And I think I had nothing else to go by other than Ed Caban gave him my name. So the threat was around that. The allegations were around that. The allegations were around that we had numerous identified and unidentified police officers while they were on duty coming on social media, trying to intimidate, threaten, defame, slander us. And it was being done at the behest of John Schell and Kaz Daughtry under the advice of their legal team, who was also threatening, defaming us online. And he was identified as well. Actual conversations between Daughtry and the team were alluded to. Conversations between John Schell and the team that were attacking us while they were at work, making overtime, we alluded to. We submitted irrefutable evidence of that to Internal Affairs. And then obviously about our children being threatened. And nothing has been being done about any of this. Misuse of police resources. Our private personal information was being had. Tanya Kinsella had her little fat dweeb little sergeant in her office calling around, asking people where I work, where I live. So did the PC's office. So did the chief of patrol. So did Fat Daughtry and all of his friends, calling around where I work, where I live, all things of that nature. So we're sitting here saying, wow, the police department is misusing taxpayer funds because they're butthurt about memes. They're butthurt about opinions. And they're coming after First Amendment speech. And we said that and we blasted it out online. And then all of a sudden it became a big deal when they went after a couple of reporters, much less than they came after me and Eric, by the way. Well, until today, myself and Eric's are under consistent threat from the upper echelon of the NYPD and of the New York City Mayor's office and all of his cohorts.
Tom put a comment here. Go to the SDNY with your IAB case. Absolutely, that's going to be the next step when this case comes to a close, because we know this case is going to be completely botched. Or maybe we'll go there before. But at some point, that is definitely going to be the next step. I mean, there's clear corruption going on with this case. Simultaneously, this has happened on two fronts. So John is being threatened by Jimmy Rodriguez from Consafritos, while simultaneously, I'm getting personalized phone calls to my personal phone 3 days in a row, 3 a.m, from the fake moniker All Cops Are Woke. So keep in mind, behind All Cops Are Woke is an active member of the service that John just spoke about. So the active member of the service that we were informed was a supervisor of the NYPD and left the job. That's the information that we have. That we got from a credible source. But what we got from Sergeant Richard Galvez is we were told that he could not release us the identity of All Cops Are Woke. And I asked Sergeant Galvez, well, how do we know someone's not going to try to blow off the back of our heads? How do we remain safe right now when we don't know the identity? He said we should be happy they're no longer employed by the police department. Well, that makes it even worse because we don't know the identity, and someone who's out there completely unhinged is no longer employed, and they may think it's a reference because of our allegations. So the police department this time told us to file a complaint. You ready for this? The complaint we're being harassed and threatened by a member of the service of the NYPD. And we were informed by the Internal Affairs, by Sergeant Richard Galvez, to make a report in Florida. And then Florida would then contact the NYPD. That's the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. Absolutely. And then in order to get the information. That makes no sense. But again, it's just another way they're trying to stonewall myself and John in trying to close out this case and trying to take it in a different direction without giving us any information. John and I spoke to Richard Galvez yesterday. We had a brief conversation. And I asked Sergeant Galvez just to make sure that he received this email showing the complete direct conflict of the information he provided to us when it comes to Consofritos. And we were told by Sergeant Richard Galvez that the investigation is going good. So I said, what does that mean? Define good, please. He said, exactly. Good for you because you're getting rid of this investigation and you're getting rid of these allegations, or good for us because you solidified our allegations. This is completely corrupt. It exposes the fact of what John and I have been saying. The Internal Affairs Bureau cannot do the investigations internally within the police department when it involves the upper echelon, especially leadership. It must be outsourced and independent. And if this investigation does not take the proper course, then we will seek SDNY. Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Arnold says, make more memes. The Sal Greco says, Internal Affairs co-sponsored a party at Consofrito on 1/6/2024. They never checked the background like they should for any NYPD event, or their chief, who's a patron, must not care. So obviously, we've said it before. We'll say it again. Either they're too stupid and too incompetent to be able to properly investigate themselves, or he's in on it. Either way, it doesn't matter. Miguel Iglesias needs to be removed from Internal Affairs. The Internal Affairs Bureau of the NYPD cannot properly investigate allegations of corruption when it comes to the upper echelon of the NYPD. Say it again. So what we're saying is the police cannot police themselves, obviously, because nothing, depending on who the mayor is, systems fail. Said it before, I'll say it again. Rudy Giuliani had made the statement. Corruption is the default position of New York City. In order to not have that be the default position in New York City, it has to be actively weeded out. But under Eric Adams, the weeding stopped. It's allowed to grow and fester. And so these 4 separate investigations, federal corruption investigations, are going to return into 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. You people are going to be sitting here with your mouth open, and we're going to be sitting here bringing you the low integrity things that are happening like we do basically every day on the show. And nothing's being done about it. You know, right now, absolutely nothing's being done about it. The allegations we alleged and the things we said all tie in to everything that's coming out now. Every single piece of it. Every single piece of it. You think that if the police department's taking care of minor summonses for you, or the FDNY is taking care of minor violations for you, or the state liquor authorities taking care of minor violations for you, you think they're not overlooking sex trafficking? You think they're not overlooking drug dealing? You think they're not overlooking trafficking of children? You think they're not overlooking this? Do you really believe it's just for little summonses? I don't.
You know, I commend my friends John Macari and Eric Dym for even being brave enough to bring all these issues up on their own podcast. They're in your face to these NYPD executives, and they're spreading the truth. And because of that, you just saw what the ramifications are. And that's coming from police executives. This Miguel Iglesias, I believe he's going to have some future lawsuits in his future. There's clearly something wrong here. Internal Affairs is supposed to investigate places that have parties, especially for fraternal organizations or anything NYPD related. And they co-sponsored a party at this place. Did they miss the fact that they had an illegal shed, that they violated court orders, that there was some kind of human trafficking allegation that the police department kind of just like went nowhere with, that the SLA had an investigation they withdrew, the health department, you found that mice were, taking, relieving themselves in the food and they were in the food. I mean, look, Internal Affairs is going to have a lot to answer for in the coming months through litigation. And this is clearly a mess. There is something going on and went on around this consofrito and the police department. And the fact that these characters came out swinging against two retired police officers for basically giving their opinion on matters of the police department and news, that's chilling. That's trying to chill someone's First Amendment speech. And if a police department is willing to do that, what else are they willing to do? There'll be more on this situation in the future. I believe there'll be a lot of litigation upcoming. And listen, there'll be more. We got to pray for New York City. I'm looking out for all of you out there, all the taxpayers, because this is taxing, I know. And it's a lot to take, but it's just incoming. And I'm sure there'll be more this week about the ongoing corruption scandal that seems to never end. And listen, you just got to pray for the best. To the men and women of the police department, you keep your head high and you just do what you do best. Don't follow what these idiots are doing. Don't listen to them with their corrupt stuff. And let's just hope that everything falls into place the way it should. And with that, if you like what you heard, you could click the like button, share, subscribe, hit the notification button, all on YouTube. On Rumble, hit the follow button, hit the Rumble button. On Spotify, Google, all those other platforms that carry the Sal Greco show, just give a good review or a rating. And with that, I'm going to say I'm off to the races. See you on the next one.